This meeting of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr. Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Present.
Director Jackson.
Present.
Director Leonard has asked to be excused. Director O'Halloran.
Here.
Director Simpson has also asked to be excused. Director Zombor.
Here. Present.
Chair Herndon.
Present.
That's 6 members present.
The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so, and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge that Milwaukee lies on traditional Menominee, Potawatomi, and Ho-Chunk homeland along the southwest shores of Lake Michigan, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes. On this site, we, the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's Menominee, Ojibwa, Ho-Chunk, Oneida, and Mohegan sovereign nations remain present to this day. This meeting is being conducted in person from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is also being broadcast on WYMS Radio, 88.9 FM, and via live stream on the MPS website, and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. Before we move to our agenda, the chair will ask that we share in a moment of silence to commemorate the passing of the following members of the MPS community. Patricia Baca, a retired teacher from Maryland Avenue School. Richard Barbuck, a retired teacher from Webster. Gail Barrett, a retired teacher. Carol Jacobs, a retired teacher. Aria Jack, a student from Goodrich. Trinity Johnson, a student from Carson Academy. Hurley Jones Jr., a student from Riverside. Tin Athel Mani Okra, a retired paraprofessional from Hamilton High School. Donna Palskowski, a teacher from Garland School. Jamarian Phillips, a student from Hamilton. Richard Smith, a retired machine plant chargeman. Edwin Sumner, a retired educational assistant from South Division High School. Jatorian Thierry, a student from Bradley Tech. Stephen Wildgruber, a civil engineer with facilities and maintenance. Aljavon Wilkins, a student from Asada High School. If we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Each month, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors accepts the public's input, both at the committee meetings and through correspondence submitted to the Office of Board Governance. As this is the regular monthly meeting of the board, however, in accordance with board rules, the board may take testimony only on those items noticed for public comment. Tonight, we will be accepting public comments on Resolution 2324R-009 by Director Zomber and Herndon on the MPS funding crisis. Public comment will not be taken on any other item. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictate that all comments, questions, or requests should be directed to the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Please be respectful to the democratic process adhered to by the board for the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting. Harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone persisting in disrupting this process will be asked to leave or will be escorted from the meeting and not allowed to return. Any ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. Also, no one other than the members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, after the meetings of the board and its committee meetings. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access the evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page on the MPS website and choosing online agendas. Now let us begin, Madam Secretary. And what is the first item of business?
The first item of business is action on the minutes of the October and November 2023 special and regular meetings of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
If there are no corrections, the minutes will be approved by consensus. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Madam President, we have one communication from the superintendent. That is the monthly report with possible action of the superintendent of schools. This is an informational item, and although it was noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the superintendent please present the report?
Madam Chair and members of the board, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This year's Battle of the Drumlines was outstanding. The competition was intense as school drummed, marched, and performed with their with all their might for this year's title. With more than twice the number of schools competing this year than last, Rufus King High School took the title with less than 1 point between them and Riverside University High School. We congratulate Rufus King High School as this year's Battle of the Drumlines Championship. We salute all of the schools and students for their hard work and determination in a tough competition. We encourage even more schools to participate next year. MPS has officially launched their new partnership with Junior Achievement 3DE, holding induction ceremonies at Bayview High School and Milwaukee Marshall High School, representing the strong partnership with each school and the unlimited possibilities for 3DE. This summer, this semester, we had just a short 700 students participated in Reality Check Day. This event is a part of the financial literacy course hosted by Educators Credit Union. During this event, students used a Bite of Reality app to engage them in a stimulated life experience. To get started, students are assigned a career and then put their newly developed financial literacy knowledge to the test. In doing so, students plan, budget, and navigate life unexpected challenges. Having only 90 minutes to meet their financial goals, students have to make some tough choices that may determine if they can maintain a savings, buy a home, retire, or need additional work. This is a priceless experience for our students, giving them stimulated reality check. We continuously work to support the needs of our children and families in the district. Information for additional winter resources can be found on our webpage. It is also the time of the year to start planning for our kindergarten enrollment fair, taking place on February 3rd of 2024. Children that will be 3, 4, or 5 years of age by September 1st of 2024 are eligible for enrollment. Now is the time to inform families within and outside of MPS about our kindergarten enrollment fair. I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season and joy for the new year. As always, a copy of my detailed report is attached, including links to access stories and information that is shared. Thank you, and I will entertain any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Does the board wish to make any comments? Okay, Madam Secretary, are there reports or communications from the board clerk, chief officer, or the Office of Board Governance?
Madam President, there are 2 communications from the Office of Board Governance. The first communication is action to rescind previous action in order to reconsider Resolution 2324R-004 on reading screeners for English language learners. The recommendation is that the board, 1, rescind its action of November 16th, 2023, relative to Resolution 2324R-004, and 2, determine how it wishes to proceed relative to the submission of the resolution to WASB.
Will the Office of Board Governance please present the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last month, the board adopted the aforementioned resolution with a directive that it be submitted to WASB for consideration by the Delegate Assembly. WASB has since informed us that because the resolution was submitted after their September 15th deadline, a different format and process is required. WASB has suggested that the resolution as it is now, is very detailed and specific to a particular act, and they recommended that it be more broadly worded, and they have provided attached language in the second attachment to tonight's item. If adopted, the overall intent of the resolution would remain the same. It would just be reworded to be a concise policy statement that fits more into the wording that WASB delegates are used to seeing. To be clear, the board is not required to submit new language. If the board wishes to reconsider the resolution, you would first need to pass a motion to rescind the action of November, and then you could consider new language and take whatever action you wish, which could include adopting WASB's recommended language, coming up with new language of your own, or going back to what you did in November.
Okay, would anyone wish to make a motion to rescind the previous action? Director Garcia.
Yes, I move that we rescind the action from previous meeting.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Director Gokul.
I'll second that.
What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item?
Madam Chair, there is a motion made and seconded to rescind the action of November 2023 relative to this resolution.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul.
Aye.
Director Jackson. Aye. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
Madam Chair, so you have rescinded the action of November, so now the board would deliberate what you wish to do with the resolution.
Okay, could I? Director Garcia.
Yes, I move that we adopt the recommended language as provided by WASB for inclusion in the submission process.
Okay, could I have a second? Dr. Kogande.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Madam Secretary?
On Director Garcia's motion to adopt the resolution as worded in the second attachment to this item, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul-Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Zombor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next communication from the Office of Board Governance?
The next communication is the monthly report with possible action on legislative activities affecting MPS. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Okay, would the Office of Board Governance please present this report?
Mr. Thiel is here and will present the report.
President Herndon, members of the board, Chris Thiel, Office of Governmental Relations for Milwaukee Public Schools. Just wanted to bring a few things to the attention of the board this evening, as over the past year, we've been discussing school district finances and what's been going on at the state level. And those two things came together again this week when yesterday we received the report that the state is sitting on $6.7 billion of surplus. When we were sitting here a year ago, we were contemplating the state budget. We went through a process during the first 6 months of the year, along with school districts across the state, advocating for resources for students. If you've been to our board meetings, and thank you for your patience in hearing me say again and again that the state of Wisconsin has not provided a per-pupil funding adjustment that keeps pace with inflation for the past 16 years. We know that if the state had simply lived up to its obligation, to its own recommendations to itself, and to the standard that the state put in place many years ago and kept pace with inflation, students across the state of Wisconsin would have $3,380 more per pupil than we are offering them today. If you put that in terms of Milwaukee Public Schools, roughly, because you know there's some complexity with the revenue limit calculation, but essentially if you multiply that amount, 3,380, by our enrollment, our school district this year, as we head into the next budget, would have $210 million, and that's just for MPS, $210 million if the state had simply kept a commitment to keep pace with inflation. And the other major item that this board has lobbied for and our colleagues across the state have advocated for is to make sure that the state is not in last place when it comes to funding students with disabilities. And we know that if we at least met what the governor requested, which was that 60% reimbursement rate, our district, again, alone, would have at least $50 million more of resources today to support our students. There's a constitutional obligation, Article 10 of the state constitution. These are recommendations that the state has made to itself at various committee levels to fund, at least at the rate of inflation, and to support a 60% reimbursement rate. And just to put that in context here at the end of the year, as we look ahead, our students would have probably over $260 million of resource alone in just those two areas if the state had kept its commitment. As we've mentioned earlier, the class of 2023, which graduated earlier this year, is the first class that never saw per pupil funding keep pace with inflation during any year of their academic career. We know that in the middle of the pandemic, the state didn't provide any adjustment whatsoever. We saw 2 years of zero. And so today, as people and other school districts are looking at their budgets and they're reflected upon the fact that the state has what is being called a surplus of $6.7 billion, we know and our colleagues know that when you don't fund your students appropriately, that's how you can develop a significant surplus. So that also kind of comes into relation with the two reports that you have as part of this item. There are two attachments, one from the Wisconsin Policy Forum that documents that our compensation for teaching staff across the state is also reflecting the fact that we're not funding schools appropriately. And the fact, which I thought was very interesting, there was an organization called Forward Analytics, some of whose members used to be a part of an organization called the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, which was focused on taxes primarily. When they took a look at the number of school districts that are more or less compelled to go to referendum because of the underfunding from the state, their report, in essence, concludes perhaps we should be doing something differently. So, obvious as that is, and obvious when we know that simply, not even an increase, just an adjustment to keep pace with inflation over that 16-year period would have us with $210 million of resources for our students. So we are coming to the tail end of the legislative session. You never know for sure, but we've got January, February, March. Maybe the legislature may still meet into April. It would take a special session, or it would take a new bill, or it would take some proactive move at the state level to release funding to support our students with disabilities, or to provide any funding at all. And obviously, with that $6.7 billion sitting there, there are the means to support our students. So it would seem to be a long shot to see that happen between now and the end of the session. But obviously, the need is there across school districts in Wisconsin. The means are there to get it done. And just, it was interesting to see that information come out yesterday when we have had these discussions every month over the course of this last year as we've advocated for our students. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but just wanted to sum up kind of that fiscal reality here as we come to the end of the year.
Thank you. Does any board members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Jackson.
Yeah, so with the funds that's there, and it's just me being, once again, keeping it simple, the next steps for us to access those funds specifically are what?
President Herndon, Director Jackson, the $6.7 billion, if somebody would want to introduce a special session tomorrow for special education, for example, and we had agreement with the legislature that they wanted to fund 60% reimbursement for students. Right now, I think that would only take about $460 million to support students across the state for the upcoming year. So they could do it. They have the opportunity to go ahead and bring themselves into special session to get that done. Right now, we're not seeing that level of urgency from the state, and so I think the odds are that those dollars will simply sit there until we come to the next state budget process, which would begin roughly a year from now. So really a year and a half from now is when those dollars would start to be budgeted for the state's next 2-year budget.
Any follow-up?
No.
Director O'Halloran.
And I just wanted to add that from where we sit, there really isn't a ton of that we can do in 2019. When I was first on the board and I went through my first budget process, I decided to walk 60 miles from Palmyra Eagle to Madison in order to raise, visibility to the call to action to fund special education at 60%. And we did get an increase. I think it was our first increase ever. But I think someone was telling me that to make me feel better because we only got an increase of like 2%. So this is a call that has been coming from education advocates for years, and it actually has bipartisan support. And so from where we sit, it's very hard for us to access that, despite the fact that they are punishing every student in schools across every district in this state, and they know better. So we as school board members, can't compel them to do the right thing, despite our best efforts.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I'd like to pass the gavel, please, to Director Gokul Gandhi.
President Herndon.
I would like to say that there's many of us on this stage even, that have spent many years that go back to the early stages of the underfunding of public education in the state of Wisconsin. So this is absolutely not new. It is absolutely purposeful as far as I'm concerned. We have testified, we've marched, many walked with Director O'Halloran those miles. I met her at the end, at the finish line, but we've done in each and everything that we possibly could do to get the attention of our elected officials in the state legislature. I personally have spoken on many, many, many occasions, and at the Blue Ribbon hearing sessions, they don't listen. And that's what brought us here today. And what more can we do but ask our community to start using your voices at the state level? That is what communities throughout the state of Wisconsin are doing. And they've been doing. We've been a joined arm-in-arm force for many, many years, trying to head this day off. But it's here, and we're just going to have to get louder. That's all I have to say. I'll take the gavel back.
Gavel passed.
Okay, Madam Secretary, the next item, please.
The next item are the reports and communications from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. There is one communication tonight, that is the monthly report with possible action on activities within the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present this report?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That report is before you. I'll just briefly highlight some of the work that we've been doing over the past month. We've engaged the Office of Finance within the administration to begin the work of the 5-year forecast. You'll be seeing that next month. Additionally, the Office of Board Governance, the administration, and the OIE have been working to bring a report back on the policy review work that the board had asked for. You'll also see that next month. With that, I'll just echo Dr. Posley's wishes for a warm holiday season to everybody, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Do board members have questions or comments on this item? With that, Madam Secretary, what is the next item, please?
The next item is the reports of the independent hearing officers of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors, student expulsions.
The chair will entertain a motion to accept, modify, or reject the reports of the independent hearing officers of the dates and times listed in our agenda. Director O'Halloran?
I move we accept the reports of the independent hearing officers as attached.
Okay, the second.
Second?
Director Garcia, second. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to accept the reports of the independent hearing officers as presented in this item, Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul-Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion passes.
We will now have the reports of the standing committees. Since public hearings were given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be given public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is the report of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. There are 2 items that have been set aside. Item 2, action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment LTE contracts exceeding 60 days has been set aside at the request of the administration. Item 16, action on a request for an early start date for Ronald Wilson Reagan College Preparatory High School, Rufus King International High School, Casimir Pulaski High School, and McDowell Montessori School for the 2024-25 school year has been set aside as it was forwarded to the board without a recommendation.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Madam Secretary, what,
Not set aside, I have a question. With the schools already that's there, is there a way that we can make an amendment, this for administration, there's a way we can make an amendment to add like any additional schools to that list or no?
Madam Chair, members, this item is set aside for separate consideration, so members can determine how they wish to proceed.
okay, with that, Director Jackson, would you like to express your wish to?
No, yeah, I'm just asking if other schools could be added to that list, like one or two. In addition, I mean, being that an AP and IB and AP.
Madam Chair, at this point, we're still presenting all the reports of committees, so then after you approve the balance of the committee's reports, we'll go back to these two items, and then that could be a point of conversation.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It's 2 and 16. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? With that, may I please have a motion on the balance of the committee's reports? Director O'Halloran.
I move we accept a balance of the committee's reports.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Madam Chair, you need a second on that motion?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. On the motion by Director O'Halloran to approve the balance of the committee's reports, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Zambor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the first item set aside?
The first item set aside is from the report of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. Item 2, action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment LTE contracts exceeding 60 days has been set aside at the request of the administration.
Does the administration have any comments on this item?
President Herndon, members of the board, Adrian Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer, we asked that this item be pulled aside because we provided a revised list as we discovered there were some clerical errors on the LTE portion of it. Specifically, there were some incorrect ethnic codes that were provided on the list. So we wanted to make those corrections, and there's a duplicate. So we wanted to, for transparency purposes, bring forward the corrections and have the record corrected and have all the correct information brought forward, and we apologize for the errors.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? Director O'Halloran.
I move that we approve the appointments as attached in the amended report.
Could I have a second? Director Gokul Gandhi.
Second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the appointments item as amended, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Zambor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item set aside?
Then, Madam Chair, we do have a number of people that were on the appointment list here tonight. I don't know if anyone had any comments.
Go ahead, Director O'Halloran.
Before we move to the next item, I think we should just thank all of the people who are new to the district or taking on new roles. Thank you for bringing your talents to serve our students, our staff, our community. Go forth and do great things.
Madam Secretary.
The next item set aside is also from the report of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. That is item 16, action on a request for an early start date for Ronald Wilson Reagan College Preparatory High School, Rufus King International High School, Casimir Pulaski High School, and McDowell Montessori School for the 2024-25 school year. This item has been set aside as it was forwarded to the board without a recommendation.
Does the administration have comments on this item?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, at this time, the administration has requested to pull this item. With the approval of the district-wide calendar, this item is not, no longer required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Madam Secretary.
This item is an action item, so it would require a motion to discharge or to allow the item to be withdrawn.
Okay, with that, could I, Director Zomber,
I move to withdraw the item.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Second.
Madam Secretary.
On the motion by Director Zambor to consider this item withdrawn, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Abstain.
Director Zambor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, 1 abstention. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
Madam Chair, that was the last item set aside. We are now on to the items of regular business. There are 2 items of regular business. The first is the report of the board's delegates. The first report is that of the board's delegate to the District Advisory Council, DAC. Director Leonard is the delegate. He is excused tonight, but his report is attached.
Thank you.
The next delegate report is that of the board's delegate to CISA 1.
The reports from the October and November Board of Control meeting the reports are attached, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do any other delegates have a report? Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
The next item is the monthly report of the president of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
My report is available and attached. Any questions that you'd like to ask me, I'd be more than welcome to answer them. Madam Secretary, is there any unfinished business before the board?
Madam Chair, there is no unfinished business.
Madam Secretary, are there any items of new business for referral to committee?
Madam President, we have no items of new business.
Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral to committee?
Yes, Madam President, we have one communication. That is Communication 2324C-03 from Lieutenant Colonel Oliver Karp on a request to modify administrative policy.
This item will be referred to the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions?
Madam President, we have 2 resolution items tonight. The first is action on a request to waive Board Rule 1.10 in order to give public hearing and take immediate action on Resolution 2324R-009 by Directors Zambor and Herndon on the MPS funding crisis. The recommendation is that the board, 1, waive Board Rule 1.10 in order to receive public comment and take immediate action, and 2, determine how it wishes to proceed relative to the resolution.
May I have a motion to waive Board Rule 1.10 so that we can discuss this item and hear from the public? Director Zomper.
I move that we waive Board Rule 1.10 in order to give public hearing and take action on the resolution.
Okay, let's see.
Does that need to be seconded? I second it.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Zombor's motion to waive Board Rule 1.10 in order to give public hearing and take action on this item, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Zombor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Director Zomber, as sponsor of this resolution, would you like to speak on it?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. So President Herndon and I are introducing this resolution because school districts across the state are facing serious financial challenges after being chronically underfunded for over 15 years. We're at a tipping point, and we're not alone in this. Public school districts all around us are having incredibly difficult conversations about potentially closing schools, laying off staff, cutting transportation, or eliminating high-quality specialty programs, even though the state is sitting on a $6.7 billion budget surplus. The most recent budget adjustment was not even enough to match inflation for a single year. To say the state gave our students crumbs would be generous. The state funding formula is broken and does not sustain the schools our students deserve. This resolution is simple. We cannot stand by and let MPS students be starved of the opportunities they need and deserve. As a board, we have an obligation to the children of Milwaukee to do what it takes to ensure they have the resources they need in schools that are safe, welcoming, and meet the needs of all. One of the ways we can do that is through a referendum. We all know that shuttering schools, overcrowding classrooms, eliminating specialty programs, cutting transportation, and balancing a budget on the backs of teachers are not sound solutions to addressing a budget crisis. These are not options the majority of our families want us to consider. A record number of school districts are turning to a referenda to fund basic operations. I'd invite you to find a school district in the area that's not having the same conversation we're having tonight about serious financial challenges. Now, the final decision is not ours to make, it's the voters' decision, but we have an obligation to inform the public about the consequences of the state's decision to recklessly underfund public schools year after year, and what will happen to MPS if we don't come up with an alternative way to bring revenue to our schools. Tonight, President Herndon and I are asking for your support on this resolution so that the administration can begin the process to bring forward a referendum recommendation early next month to ensure the City of Milwaukee voters can have a chance to save the future of public schools this spring.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Director Zomber, and I'd like to pass the gavel.
President Herndon.
Thank you. As co-sponsor of this resolution, I will not repeat everything that Director Zomber spoke of, but we can't stress enough the dire straits that public education has experienced under our state legislator. Indeed, we have been suffering being defunded for far too many years, over 15 years. That is just ridiculous that our state doesn't see fit to at least fund us in a manner that keeps up with inflation. In addition to that, you heard earlier tonight about the $6.7 billion that our state has available to fund public schools throughout the state appropriately, but yet they refuse. And even when we had to experience the 2 years of COVID, the COVID pandemic, even then, they inflicted pain on public schools throughout the state by providing zero additional funding. Absolutely zero. That is unconscionable, and I, for one, definitely ask that the residents of the city of Milwaukee, I can tell you throughout the state that everyone has really been active, and we're going to have to step up our activity as well, because our children's education, their future, depends on it. So that is why, at this point, we're backed into this corner, and we want the community's input. We want your support. Our children are counting on all of us. And with that, I'll take the gavel back. Thank you.
Gavel passed.
Thank Before I go back to board members, Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
Madam Chair, we had no one registered to speak on the
I
virtual
have.
platform, and you have one speaker in the audience.
Yes. I have Rich Stenwick. Would you come forth, please?
Good evening. My name is Rich Steenwick. I come to you this
Could
evening.
you spell your last
I'm
name?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I always forget about that. Steenwick, S-T-E-E-N-W-Y-K. I come to you this evening as a parent of 3 students in this district. And I bring, I guess, only an informational stance on the question of a referendum. I agree with the board's position that this challenge comes to us from the state, affects districts large and small. There's no question that there is a serious problem. But the action of a referendum may be, at this particular time, a very challenging one, since we'll be asking the voters for their opinion on more of their money in spring 2024, right after they come off the heels of dealing with tax increases in Milwaukee. I know I've not had a chance to dig into all the details and complexities of school funding formulas and the $6.5 billion that the state supposedly has, but I don't think in 3 short months will you be able to make the argument for everyone that the referendum will be the way to solve this problem. And so I ask that, you know, as you consider that, keep in mind the high likelihood for a chance of referendum failure and the penalties that come also from the state with that, such as locking in the low revenue ceiling amounts and other things that directly affect that funding formula. In a way, we could end up making the situation worse. And again, I'm not sure I could work my way through all those rules, so I hope that you all can, and I place you know, my trust in you to make the best decision you can and do the right thing for our students. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Madam Secretary, if there aren't more speakers, I'll go to the board directors for their input.
That was the last speaker request we had.
Okay. Are there any members that wish to speak on this item? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you, and that was actually one of my questions, but was about the potential, you know, the risks associated with this if it didn't pass. But as I understand it, tonight, we are voting to say that we deem it desirable to seek a referendum. We are empowering administration to consider it and prepare for it and bring forward a recommendation, but we're not actually taking the step of putting it on the ballot. And so I think the speaker raised a very valid point, and I think that if we vote for it tonight, then we can have the potential to discuss the risks of what if it doesn't pass at a later date. So I just, is my understanding correct? I'm just looking to the co-sponsors for verification.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, are there any more board members that wish to speak on this item?
Just a question, yeah.
Director Jackson.
The last referendum that passed was when?
2020.
2020?
Spring of 2020, actually, which was the very beginning of the pandemic. Yes. Any more questions?
Madam Chair, if there's none of the other members wish to comment, I do have 2 comments received, submitted by Directors Leonard and Simpson, and they ask that they be read into the record.
Would you read those, please?
Certainly. This statement is from Director Henry Leonard. I would be voting to allow our voters to make the decision on whether or not to agree to an increase in our revenue limits for the sake of the education of their children. The referendum gives our constituents a voice and control of this decision. The board should not infringe upon a decision that affects the whole community and especially their children. The 2020 referendum proved conclusively that they made the decision to give their children full services. This referendum carries much greater consequences and is the safest way to not only protect the district, but also add an increase to our revenue limit, which cannot be overturned at the legislative level. For these reasons, I am in favor of sending the referendum to the general population to decide its future and ours. Thank you for your careful consideration of this item. Sincerely, Director Leonard. The next statement is from Director Erica Simpson. Although I cannot be there this evening, I want to express my support for Resolution 2324R-009 on the MPS funding crisis. Our students deserve the very best educational opportunities we can provide, and this referendum will help MPS meet that goal. Our state legislature has not provided the dollars needed to meet the cost of special education or the rate of inflation, putting a strain on the MPS budget for a decade. I'd like to thank the authors of this resolution for taking this first step on behalf of our students. Erica Simpson, Board of Directors, District 2.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and I would like to thank our board directors who are unable to be here that still took the time to write those letters. If there aren't any more board directors that would like to make questions or comments, I'd like to ask what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item?
I was trying to give Director Zomber the opportunity. I move that we approve Resolution 2324R-009 related to MPS funding crisis.
And a second, please, by
Second.
Director Gopal Gandhi. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to adopt Resolution 2324R-009 on the MPS funding crisis, Director Garcia,
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Zombor,
Aye.
and President Herndon.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any other resolution items?
Madam Chair, the next resolution item is the resolutions for introduction and referral to committees. The first resolution is Resolution 2324R-006 by Director Zombor and Gokul Gandhi on menstrual equity.
This item will be referred to the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. What is the next resolution?
The next resolution is 2324R-007 by Director Zombor on an audit review of the expulsion process.
This item will be referred to the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. What is the next resolution?
The next resolution is Resolution 2324R-010 by Director Gokul Gandhi on an audit reorganization.
This item will be referred to the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. What is the next resolution?
That was the last resolution for introduction, and there are no other items of business on tonight's agenda.
Madam Secretary, that was the last item on the agenda. With that, I'd like to announce that the meeting is adjourned.